Ethan sat motionless in the living room, the evening shadows stretching lazily across the walls, as though time itself had slowed to mourn. The house felt unusually silent, the kind of quiet that seemed to hold its breath. Just hours ago Lydia, his wife, had walked out. There had been no shouting, no slammed doors, only the faint click of a zipper and the diminishing echo of her footsteps on the porch, fading into the night. He could still see the suitcase resting near the door, her hand trembling as she lifted it. Her final words haunted him, fragmentary and elusive, like whispers caught underwater. The memory that clung most stubbornly wasn't her voice, but the metallic slide of that zipper and the distant hum of her car fading down the street. The house, once alive with laughter, soft routines, and familiar warmth, now felt hollow. Photos lined the mantel, weekend hikes, birthdays, smiles frozen in time, yet they seemed like relics of someone else's life. Ethan picked up one frame, tracing her smile with a thumb, and realized, with a sting, that somewhere along the way, that smile had stopped being for him. He recalled the quiet dinners, the polite silences, the nights she spent late at the office, and the subtle drift of distance that had grown between them. The signs had been there all along, patient, painful, and insistent, but he had refused to see them. He had clung to the notion that love, if held tightly enough, could bridge any gap. Now reality stood stark before him. She was gone, and love, no matter how fervent, had not been enough. Dragging himself to the kitchen, Ethan noticed 2 untouched mugs on the counter. That morning, he had poured her a cup of coffee, a small gesture meant to bridge the growing chasm. She hadn't touched it. He emptied both mugs down the sink, watching the dark liquid spiral away. The act felt symbolic. 2 lives once entwined, now flowing down separate drains. The sound of running water filled the room briefly, then left only the soft hum of the refrigerator. Leaning against the counter, chest tight, he struggled to breathe under the weight of absence. Every noise, the creak of floorboards, the tick of the clock, the faint whisper of wind outside, echoed her departure. He considered calling someone, a friend, a brother, anyone who might remind him that life had not ended. But the thought of explaining this quiet loss, this surrender without conflict, made him recoil. Then the doorbell rang. Ethan froze. A flicker of hope ignited. Perhaps she had returned, forgotten something. Rational thought extinguished the spark. Lydia would not leave and come back so simply. Yet, heart pounding, he walked to the door. Margaret, Lydia's mother, stood there. Her presence struck him with gentle force. She wore a soft grey cardigan over a pale blouse, a small leather bag resting at her side. Her calm eyes carried a weight of quiet understanding and strength. "Ethan," she said softly, voice steady yet kind. "May I come in?" He stepped aside, words failing him. Of all the people he could have expected, Margaret was the last. He braced for blame, perhaps anger, but found none, only compassion. They sat in the living room, the emptiness from moments ago now softened by her presence. Ethan clasped his hands, searching for words. Silence stretched until he whispered, "She's gone." "I know," Margaret replied, her tone even. "She called me before she left." Her words landed like a quiet blow. "Then you know she doesn't want this anymore," he said, voice barely audible. "Sometimes," Margaret said, "people don't leave because they stop caring. They leave because they no longer know how to stay." Ethan blinked, unprepared for this empathy. Her voice carried no judgment, no pity, only truth that settled deep in his chest. "She's searching for something," Margaret continued. "And it's not something you could have fixed alone." For the first time that evening, the suffocating silence loosened. Margaret didn't press him for explanations or demand old wounds be reopened. She simply offered presence, a quiet companionship he hadn't realized he needed. Minutes passed. Ethan studied her. The calm in her gaze, the gentle strength she carried, the way her expression seemed to hold both sorrow and peace. For a fleeting instant, he imagined something more in her eyes, but dismissed it, swallowed by grief. "Why did you come tonight?" he asked at last. Margaret's smile was faint, touched by sadness. "Because I didn't want you to face this alone. I know what it's like to lose someone without a proper goodbye." Her words lingered like a soft echo. Ethan, unused to comfort, felt a small relief. When Lydia was around, Margaret's visits had always been brief, polite. But now her presence felt different, close, gentle, and steady. As the night deepened, conversation was minimal. Margaret didn't pry, she simply stayed, a presence that wrapped the emptiness like a warm, thin blanket. When she rose to leave, Ethan walked her to the door. "Thank you," he whispered. "You don't need to," she said. "Just promise me you'll eat something and try to rest." "I'll try," he murmured. She nodded, stepping into the cool night air. As the door closed, silence returned, but it was not the same oppressive void. Warmth lingered, subtle quiet, something like hope. The next evening, rain tapped gently against the windows. Ethan had busied himself with small chores, yet the house felt strange, hollow beyond routine. He made tea but forgot to drink it, browsed books without opening them, and the weight of life without Lydia settled quietly, relentlessly. The doorbell rang again. A tug of view froze him. Opening it, he found Margaret in a navy raincoat, grey hair neat, holding lemons and ginger. "I thought you might like fresh tea," she said softly. He stepped aside. Something loosened inside. She moved through the kitchen with quiet ease, preparing tea as though she had always belonged. Steam rose from the cups, warm and fragrant. "I didn't come to revisit choices," she said. "Nights can be hard. Sometimes it helps to have someone present." Ethan nodded. "I keep trying to make sense of it," he admitted. "Then I stop, afraid there's nothing to make sense of." "Understanding isn't always reason," she said. "Quiet can mean comfort or distance. It depends on the heart." "I loved her," he confessed. I gave my best. I thought consistency could stop the drift. Margaret rested her hands on her mug. You gave what you had. Sometimes the distance comes from inside the other person. It's not a measure of your worth. Relief washed over him. These words did not erase pain. They framed it, made it bearable. He asked, then why does it feel like all the good parts of me left with her? Because you gave your whole heart, she said softly. Loss borrows the rooms we build, but those rooms still belong to us. Their conversation wandered, free of agenda. Ethan spoke of road trips, laughter, subtle signs he had ignored. Margaret listened fully, offering small, practical truths, steady, sufficient healing. Grief is not a courtroom, she said. You may speak your truth. I am here only to ensure you're not alone in saying it. Even mundane tasks became small acts of restoration, washing, drying, clearing cups. The house, previously bowed under absence, straightened a little under her presence. Evenings continued with gentle conversation, gardens, storms, childhood memories of Lydia. Slowly, Ethan laughed again, a sound nearly forgotten. Margaret's visits became a rhythm, grounding and steady though unplanned. Then one afternoon she came for no reason but company, speaking with calm honesty, revealing vulnerability. She admitted finally that she had begun to care for Ethan, not as Lydia's husband, not as someone broken, but as himself. Ethan felt the weight of her words, recognition. Not romance or desire, but a bond forged in shared loss, presence, and quiet compassion. Then we don't start anything, she said softly. We just walk, one step at a time. He nodded. The house, once echoing with absence, now felt inhabited. Silence no longer hostile. It carried traces of kindness, understanding, hope. Ethan realized some stories do not end when love leaves. They begin when compassion stays.